Hey, good morning. This is Jason Bellamy at Builder Buddy. I'm going to go over a luxury inspection report. This house was over 7,000 square feet and was about 24 years old. At 24 years, we like to see that the heating and cooling equipment has been replaced. The water heater should have been replaced. The roof covering typically should have been replaced unless it was a 35-year plus roof. Most roofing materials, they have a 25-year life expectancy. Here we see, here's the summary. We have 19 blue items, 5 orange, and 3 red. This was actually a good inspection report for the size of the home. 7,000 square feet is quite large, and so we can find a lot of things typically. So this was a good inspection report considering the size of the home. At between 15 and 25 years, there's a lot of components that start to age out and other things to look for. You can see this in our blog, Buying a 15 to 25-year-old home. And now we're going through the exterior. So we made a comment here about the mature trees around the home, which can stress the gutters and cause overflowing gutters and other issues. We did inspect this home right after a big rain event, and we saw that some of the surrounding grade was very saturated, very wet, so they could do a better job of directing water away from the home. The other thing that we observed is that the front slopes toward the home, and we did see evidence of water penetration at the basement, at areas which we'll get into that. And this is common. Sometimes homeowners or contractors that are less aware of how to install a proper grading or drainage system, they will put a drainage system right up against the foundation wall, like here, for example. So you see this gravel system, and which is probably a French drain, and a black corrugated pipe typically is under there to help direct water away. Well, what can happen is if that black corrugated pipe becomes clogged or damaged, which is very common, now you've allowed all this water to go right up against the house. And if that system fails, water is pushing through. We also don't want to have any water near the footing areas. So this ideally should be 8+ feet away from the home. There should be a low point or swale or French drain or other strategy, not right up against the foundation area. And we did see evidence of water penetration in the basement here, and we go into that further and later on in the report. It's common to see mulch piled up against condensers, especially as sellers prepare their home for a sale and they want to freshen up that mulch, and they pile up the mulch too high in many areas, including the condensers. This can damage your condenser. Not a big repair, but it's something that can cause expensive damages. This is common to see in larger homes, is that we're not calling out a lot of decayed siding and trim, especially for newer homes, but we're seeing conditions that could cause issues over the long term. So, for example, this home had a fiber cement, like Hardie siding, and there wasn't any flashing over these windows here at the rear. Here, and you can see 3 levels of windows. So what we start to see, especially after about 20 years or so, is this becomes very soft above these windows, and we start to see that fiber cement will become soft and deteriorate if it's in wet, moist conditions over the long term. So siding that's sitting on roofing, siding that's sitting on decking, siding with improper flashing. Right now, the siding looks okay, but in another 5-10 years, sometimes the damages can accelerate. Homes should be painted about every 8 years or so, and decks and porches should be stained every 3 years. So that is a comment we might make. Carpenter bees are very common in our area. They make these dime-sized holes in wood and trim. Especially, they love the roof framing areas and decks, especially. So flashing at decks. It's common not to see proper flashing, And sometimes, depending on the side of the home and the prevailing wind directions, we don't really see any residual issues. Other times it can be catastrophic. And sometimes we just don't have access. Like, for example, here on the other side of this deck, it's a finished basement. So we just don't have access to the framing here to see if there are issues. So it's just, we're making a note of it. And so hard surfaces, in this case, stamped concrete. Ideally, we like to see the stamped concrete installed 2 inches below the siding and framing. So if you see siding, behind that siding typically is framing that looks like this, plywood or SB sheathing, which with framing. And even when those hard surfaces slope away from the home, water can splash and eventually make its way through the framing and cause air quality issues. In this case, there wasn't any drywall here, so we could see it. If there was drywall here, we wouldn't be able to see it, and it might not even show up with a moisture meter. So this is what happens when you install hard surfaces right up against the siding and framing. And similar observation with the asphalt driveway. It looks like it's sloping slightly toward the garage doors. We can see water stains, which indicate standing water. And what can happen is it's very common to see water damage at the jamb on either side of the garage doors. And this is also a place that wood-destroying insects like as well, because they can become consistently wet, and it's easy access for wood-destroying insects to access the wood framing here, because a lot of times with garages, the wood framing is right on the ground. Now we're moving on to the roof. So the roof had been replaced, or it was a 35 plus year roof. Didn't really have any observations on the roof covering. The gutters, it did look like they were overflowing at areas. One detail that we like to see is when gutters intersect with sidewalls or siding, we want to see 1 inch between the gutter and the siding, and something called kick-out flashing. What that does is it directs, as water is coming down this roof, the kick-out flashing directs the water into the gutter. It's all too common to see water leaking at this seam right here, because these need to be resealed every 3 years or so with silicone or rubber spray, for example. And if this gets clogged, it will overflow against the siding, and even with fiber cement, it will become soggy and damaged, and eventually make its way into the framing. So this is a detail that we like to see at where gutters intersect with siding. This was a bit of a strange one, where the main plumbing vent was exiting through the roof. It was not properly strapped or supported to the ceiling, and all that weight of this PVC eventually just gravity took over and just fell down. So now there's just a hole in the roof. You could see daylight, and water could get in there quite easily, and your sewer gases are entering into your attic, and potentially, the occupants are catching a whiff of some foul air. So that can easily be repaired, but it's an important one to discover. Moving on, structural components. I like to take videos of the attic areas or crawl space areas where buyers don't typically see, or at least they don't see all of these areas. We always call out our limitations, things that we can't see. So this was a good find here. At the main living area, there is an interior balcony. And there's a lot of weight here. You can see all this framing. It's quite a wide balcony. It looks like this is 6+ feet. This is 10+ feet here. So all that drywall, framing, the railings, the hardwood flooring, all these finishes, and they're all supported on this one wall here. And looking below, we did not see a beam or columns to carry that weight. This wall is not supporting the roof, but there's enough weight here to cause deflection at the floor. And this flooring here at this hallway was visibly sloped toward this wall, so this was sinking down. So in this case, they're looking at a structural engineer coming up with a repair plan, which is more than likely a steel beam and supports either to the walls or columns. Typically, people want to avoid columns in big open spaces like this, so this is going to be a very long beam. They don't want the beam to be too deep, which is often why steel is chosen. So this was a good find for the buyers here. I'm glad we could find that. Moving on, plumbing. So these are just sort of overview pictures. They had a tankless system. They had a sediment filter. They had rough-ins for future bathrooms, I believe, so that is good because putting in these lines below slabs is a very expensive project after the fact. There's a clean out, which every system should have a clean out for sewer or septic repairs. There was a point of use water filtration system under a sink. Natural gas. It's very common to see leaks at exterior faucets. Typically, people forget to to insulate these over the winter time where we have freezing temperatures like here. So now we've moved on to electrical. These are just overview pictures here. Minor note at the panel. And so it's very common at finished basements. A lot of times a buyer will buy a home in our area and the basement is not finished, and so they'll have another contractor come, or sometimes some homeowners will do it themselves and finish the basement. It's not a difficult project, but one thing that is very common to see is DIY electrical, not enough outlets or improperly wired outlets like hot, neutral, reverse, or missing GFCI outlets because they are the sort of a jack of all trades is doing it, or the owner is doing the wiring themselves. So there are some wiring observations. In our area, we typically recommend dehumidifiers in unfinished basements because we have very humid summers. We have missing wall insulation here at areas between the heated and unheated areas. So now we're in heating and cooling. So this is a 22-year-old home. Heating and cooling equipment has about really a 12 to 20-year life expectancy. So 15 years later, so this was built in 1998. 15 years later, they installed newer equipment, but now this equipment is 9 years old at the time of this video, and it uses the older R22 refrigerant. So even though the heating and cooling equipment has been replaced, this it's only 9 years old, but with that older R22 refrigerant, this really could go at any time and potentially need to be replaced. And then because this is a larger home, there were two systems here, and this one is from 2014 with R410A, the newer refrigerant. So hopefully this one has another, if this is 8 years old, hopefully has another 7+ years of life left in it. So here's just more overview pics of the heating and cooling equipment. And the upstairs master bathroom, there was a window, but not a fan vent. So sometimes the occupants, they take a hot shower or a bath, and it's the winter time, they don't feel like opening up the window, and so you'll get condensation at the ceilings, for example. And windows. So at 22 years, regardless of the window type or manufacturer, we're going to start seeing failing energy seals, windows that don't open and close properly. issues with the hardware, cloudy windows, which we're seeing here. So the window observations are starting to add up in this house and really are likely to accelerate over the coming years. And with a 7,000 square foot house, this repair package or window package could become quite expensive to replace. We did have a minor door observation, and so one note that we like to make is rooms in basements that look like someone might want to put a bedroom there. We just like to let people know that typically you want to see either a door or a window directly to the outside for it to be a habitable bedroom in the basement. It needs an emergency egress. So a door or a window directly to the outside, or it would not count. It would not be a safe bedroom. And then we just made some cosmetic observations here. We did see some history of leaks at ceilings. We don't know if they were active or inactive. Probably inactive in this case. We're going over the fireplaces, and that is it. We do not find any wood destroying insects or mold issues here. So this is a luxury home over 7,000 square feet, and it's about 24 years old. So thanks for watching the video.